Alright, greetings. So our game just finished. My opponent ended up resigning once we get to the final setup, which I'll show you. So here we are. We're gonna go ahead and start it off. So starting off, I played King's Pawn. He followed up with E5. Played King's Gambit, which is sacrificing the F pawn, which the F pawn on F2 and F7 is a weakness. So I'm offering up that early, but this opening, if you don't play it right, you can that weakness can be taken advantage of. So he takes. I play the rest of the line, which is knight to F3, which protects against this queen coming right here, which would put me in check, where I would have to bring this pawn up only for this pawn to take. And I can't just take back, because if I take back, the queen that will be here comes in, takes my rook, and this whole king side is just decimated. Alright, that was a little animated. Alright, so so next, okay, he plays another line. He plays another move that's in this line, which is G5. Protect that pawn right there, because I could easily come and move my queen's pawn up. So I bring my bishop out, because I want to take his F7 pawn, because again, the F pawns are weakness on the king side. So he brings out H5, launching an attack on my king side, which is a smart strategy. On my side right now, it is a somewhat of weakness, because my king is exposed, and right now he has 3 pawns launching at my 2 pawns. And playing the numbers game here, his 3 pawns will probably beat my 2 pawns. So now that's not always gonna be the case, but it is possible. So seeing that, I realized, he launched a 3rd pawn action here. It would be bad for me to try to castle on this side, because then I'm essentially putting myself in the fire of attack. So instead, I played H4. Now the reason I played H4 is because, let's get my pen out here. If he chooses to use his pawn and attack this, I can come in with either my rook or my knight. So preferably I would come in with my rook, because I want to get my rook into the game, and that's the fastest way to do it. This is one of the fastest ways to do it, especially on this king side, because if my rook gets here, he takes, he takes my pawn, I come in with my rook, and then my next move, depending on what he does, I come in, I get these 2 pawns. So then I've kind of got my rook into the game very, very early. So that's one of the reasons I decided to do that. Now, if he decides not to do that, and instead moves this pawn up here, well, now I can get my knight out of danger and just move it here or here. So yeah, that's why H5 I thought was a good move. And looking back at the chess analysis, said it was a good move as well. So, and of course he moved it up. And on my next move, I decided to put my knight towards the center of the board, because I want to control these 2 pawns right there. Yeah, well, not so much control those 2 pawns as much as I want to control those 2 squares. Right now, it doesn't look like I have much, but as the game progresses, you'll kind of see what I mean. So he decides to move that pawn down there, which is good. This square right here becomes an outpost, because this pawn on the end is officially a pass pawn, which means there's no pawn behind it that can protect it. And right now, with this pawn in front, well, actually, let me circle that. Right now, with this pawn right here, this pawn be considered a pass pawn, because my pawn can't just go anywhere. It's stuck there until this pawn decides to move down, where I could take, and then that pawn will further develop if possible. So that's a good place to put that pawn, whenever you can get it. On a square like that, where a pawn becomes like What makes this pawn powerful is now this pawn controls this square and this square. Now, this doesn't mean these squares are important, but that doesn't mean they're not important now. Doesn't mean they won't be important later. Okay, so I move that pawn up because on my next move, I want to get my bishop here. That way I can control that file. All I have to do is move this knight out the way anywhere, and my bishop officially puts this rook in danger. That's why fianchetto bishops, which are bishops on these squares, are dangerous. Especially when there's like no pawn there. Like right here, there's no pawn there. It's a knight there, which I can easily move. And all of a sudden, this bishop right here that, is hidden and kind of hidden, standing back here like a ninja, all of a sudden just launches an attack from across the board. And you won't see it coming because, again, the bishop is kind of hidden there. So he moves that pawn up. I'm assuming he gets queen out on the queen side of the board, because on the king side he can't really do too much. I mean, he can move his king here if he wants to, but it's not really being too aggressive. I would just move that up, or again, since I would just have my bishop there and that's protecting that, and then depending on what he does next, I can move my knight out the way to launch an attack, and all of a sudden this queen that's here is in danger. So he probably saw that and thought about, it's no point. So instead, I'm just gonna bring it to the other side. Or his plan was to attack on the queen side, period. King side is already exposed. He can attack a little bit more, but I don't know. It's some stuff going on, but it's maybe not worth attacking right now. We're on the queen side of the board. Well, I can't castle my king side, so now would be a great time to kind of expose the king side if possible. That way I can't castle on either side, or I won't castle on either side, because both sides will be exposed to be no point. So I decided to launch that out. So, in that case, I kind of weakened my own king side. It'd be better if I would put my bishop on this on this rank rate. I want to put my bishop on C1 to B2. That way it can protect that knight. But at the time, I was thinking that. So, and again, when you play this game and you move pieces, sometimes every couple hours or every couple days, it's easy to forget the move you had planned in your head. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's just not obvious. So I think that's kind of what happened there. But regardless, that my knight is not protected. Okay, bring this queen out to attack that pawn on d4. And really just get his queen out to where it can get into the action and start to make some actual moves. I decided, okay, now is a great time to spring forward and attack that weak f7 pawn. And by putting him in check, he has to go there, of course. And then I decided to take that pawn that was, I decided to take this pawn because I really want to get these two pawns out of my way. So this pawn is, it's not doing too much. These two pawns aren't doing too much except being in my way, because my bishop doesn't really have anywhere to go until this pawn right here moves out the way. So that's why I took that pawn. Okay, he put me in check. Fair move. I decided to move that pawn up. So now the pawn I just moved up is pure. Actually, let me just show it. So now this pawn is protecting this pawn, which is protecting that, and this pawn is protected by this knight. So this is a nice little fortress right here. So you see all those pieces are protected, and this pawn is protecting this pawn. This pawn is protected by this rook. So this whole little area right here, this little fortress, is protected by other pieces. So even though my king and my queen side is exposed, having protection like this is good. The only reason it's not, it could become a weakness, and that's, of course, when he starts to get these pawns, develop them, and start attacking these. That's when it's become dangerous. So I think that was his plan. That's what I would have been doing. But I think that was his plan. But I think I put some other moves in motion, which kind of stopped that plan earlier than expected. Okay, so he did that. or move that pawn up to get me out of check. He decided to move that pawn up, launching, getting that pawn into the game. Starting to attack my queen side. I decided instead of taking it, because I don't want to give him any room right here, right? So if I were to take this, now his queen can come here. Now his queen kind of has an opening to this side, somewhat. He can't really do too much because I still have, this. You can't go to that square, and well, actually, no. This is a dangerous square with this pawn right here. So, however, I want the queen to stay right where it is. So instead of just taking it, I decided let me move up, because now this pawn has to move down one. But again, it makes it harder for him to do so, because there's still some pieces in the way. So I decide to move up one. He gets the bishop out of there. I decide, well, this pawn right here is protected by this queen, so why not move it up one to challenge this bishop, but also control that square? So that's what I did. I moved that up there. That bishop decided to go there. I decided to take back there because at first I didn't want to challenge that bishop just yet because that knight was protecting it. I wanted to put it in a position where it was pinned. So at the moment, it seemed like a better idea to just take that pawn. After looking at the analysis, of course, I probably should have gone with another move, specifically probably there. So, but regardless, it's all good. So he took, which I guess that was somewhat surprising, but again, he has still, my side of, I should have put this. My pieces are more developed, so I have more space to work with, whereas he doesn't. See, as you can see, my queen could essentially move freely, minus that pawn, of course. My bishop is going to take that one next move. This bishop is right here, and it can move freely. So I have pieces that can move freely. Whereas my opponent, this queen can't go there or there. It could go there, but that's not really doing too much. And, it's only so far the queen can go. So that's not really an option. So the queen is kind of stuck. All these pieces, they're not stuck, but they're not doing anything, right? Like this bishop can't do jack until this pawn moves up. This knight can come here and here, but then again, since it's such an open game, moving the knight takes too many moves. So I can see why this piece might be getting ignored right now. So, but my pieces have more space to move. And that was one of my strategies, taking advantage of that space. And we have an open game, which, as you can see, it's a lot of paths that are open, a lot of space on the board. Not everything's not jumbled up and jumbled up. That's where having two bishops comes in. That's where having two bishops are great. And it's also great to learn how to use two bishops with an open game. So I took that because, again, I want to take full advantage of having two bishops. So he decided to move his rook up. I decided, well, okay, now is a great time to take that knight. So when I do get this rook out the way, I can eventually come to this square. And eventually I do want to get this rook back here, because this bishop was controlling this square right here. So right now the king can't go there or there. And right now the king can go here. So I need to get this back here so that it's under control. So moves the pawn up. Okay, again, attacking my queen side, because right now my queen side is, it wasn't a weakness, but as he digs through my pieces, it becomes a weakness. So I decided, okay, well, let's attack his other major pieces, just kind of out here on the board, and he's in my way. So I put my bishop right there. He brings his knight out. I think he brought his knight out as an attempt to get his knight into the game. But again, the knight doesn't have too much space to work with here. So I'm not really sure what the strategy was there. Because we're bringing the knight out there. Can't go there or there because of this pawn. Can't go there because of this bishop. Can't go here because queen's sitting on it. It can go there if it can jump to that square if it needs to, but my pawn is here where I can just take back. So it's, again, I'm not sure why he brought the knight out outside of maybe trying to get something on here. So after he brought his knight out, I brought my bishop back to that square because, of course, I want to keep control of that e8 square like I had before. Because when I deliver a checkmate, I want to make sure the king has nowhere to go. So just to review, right now, that square is taken or controlled. That square is controlled, and that square is controlled. This square isn't controlled, but it's blocked. So block squared is almost the same as controlled. A control squared in the right situation. That's all. So that's that. Move that back. He decided to move his rook there to, face value, right? Face value. He's threatening both my bishops at once. That's face value. So, but of course, what's not seen here, or maybe he wasn't paying attention to it, or he ignored. I don't know what the case was. Once again, looking at it face value, it was like, bam, he has both my bishops, pinned, or not pinned, forked right now, right? This is like a rook fork. However, I want to put my bishop on this square. Why? Because, looking at the x-ray, my bishop's here is controlling this diagonal, right? With this rook here, doing that, bam. Now this rook can't take this bishop. It's pinned because if it moves, it's exposing its king behind it. So now if he decided to do something else, my move stayed the same no matter what he did, right? But if he did something else, I was still gonna put my bishop on there, and he was gonna have a few choices, right? He could have put his rook here where I just would have put him in check again, and then he would have moved this knight here where I would have taken his knight, and that would have been checkmate because that square is controlled and that square is controlled, and my pawn is protecting the bishop that would be there. So that's how to play. So another thing he could have done if he wanted to, and not all players want to, but sacrifice the queen to live another day, right? Depends on the type of player you are and if you really think you can still win the game. So if a person doesn't think they can win the game, or if they lose a very important piece, they're just going to resign. So instead of, something else he could have done was use this queen to take my bishop, right? If he would have done that, of course, I would have taken this queen with my pawn. He would proceed to take this bishop. I would have proceeded to probably move that pawn right there. Probably would move there. Would have got this queen, taking this pawn, and now I'm on my way to having another queen over here. So I would have had two queens on the board. When he would have had none. So that's something that could have happened with that. So we're sacrificing the queen. So, but this is a stopping point. After this, my opponent resigned. So, and he resigned because he didn't sacrifice his queen, so I guess he didn't see that he can win without his queen. So instead of just taking my bishop with his queen to sacrifice it, where I take his queen back, and that whole sequence I just showed you, and he lives on to keep fighting to see if he can't win the game, he decided to resign. So you will see that when playing players, playing with different players, again, it's up to the player if they do that. Some players are fine to try to keep going and see if they can get another queen, or if they can win a different way. Not all players are comfortable doing that. So, but so that's essentially my game. So, let me know what you think about the review and the analysis and the game overall. And yeah, when I play him again, I will surely let you know. All right, deuces.